We are looking at a log here from Bigbang Pro. Thank you for submitting. Also, thank you for giving your config dump. Let's see what we can come up with. Uh, the first thing I did is I brought up your gyro traces and I zoomed them out. And immediately I see that something is going on here in roll. I don't know what it is. We'll take a look and we'll see what it is. But this looks excessively noisy to me, and also it sure looks like there's some kind of oscillation here. And if I can see that at the 10% zoom level, it's probably pretty extreme. And in fact, here, if we look where roll climbs out here, this is a really noisy roll. Uh, this is probably affecting your flight. I'd be surprised if this wasn't affecting your flight somehow, whether it's you can see it in the camera or whether it's just something you might feel. Pitch is a little noisy too, and or sorry, yaw is a little noisy. Pitch is a little noisy, but we're seeing it most on roll. Um, so let's just take a look and see if we can figure out what's going on here. First thing I want to do is I want to look at your soft filters and see, wait a second, what firmware are you on, first of all? Betaflight, I thought so, okay. Let's take a look at your soft filters then. Gyro cut hertz 100, P-term cut hertz 40, D-term cut hertz 14, and gyro LPF. Where's gyro LPF? I'm sure I just passed it and you all saw it. Hello. Hang on. There we go. Gyro LPF equals 0. So you've got the gyro LPF turned off. So the first thing I would suggest doing is setting gyro LPF equals 188. Boris recommends that now anyway, not for filtering, but because of the way that the sampling rate relates to aliasing. I won't go into that. Since it looks like you need a little extra filtering anyway, and since there are other benefits to going to gyro LPF equals 188, that would be my first suggestion. Also, I think you shouldn't be afraid to lower gyro cut hertz here down to, I would just take it to 60 and see if it's better. There's this tendency, I think, with the gyro filtering to want to, 190 to try and find this sweet spot where but the amount of latency doesn't change that much when you go from 100. If you disable it, you gain a little bit of latency, but it doesn't change that much if you go from 100 to 90 to 80 to 70 to 60. That's not that much difference there. So, but it can be a huge difference in the amount of noise that your gyros are letting through. So I would suggest gyro LPF equals 188, and if that doesn't clean things up, and that's not going to make a big difference, it'll make a little bit of a difference. I feel like you're probably going to need more than gyro cut hertz to 60. I would probably just go ahead and do both of those, frankly. Um, so let's go back to your log now, and let's take a look. Let's see if we can take a look in a little more detail at what's going on. Let's take your gyros out here and let's just take a look at, well, let's take a look at roll, since roll is the noisiest one. A lot of oscillation in the gyro and a lot of oscillation in the P term. And like here, for example, when I notice we are looking at the roll axis, notice that here we got this huge peak in roll. Yeah, because we're doing a flip. Yeah. Not much. Let me throttle down. Well, yeah. What's going on here? No, let me see this one. Let's take a look here. See, that wasn't anything super extreme. So your flight video looks very smooth, and I don't want to get into I don't want to fall into the trap of sort of chasing pretty lines, right? Because your flight video looks good, then there's not a lot to complain about. But I gotta say, the noisiness of the gyro traces would worry me, and I would definitely want to try and filter those more. I am not prepared to say that your P term is too high, i.e., maybe I am. So here's a roll, and I've said in other videos that during a roll like this, I don't want to see the P term jamming back and forth. It's unable to achieve the desired angular rate, and it's constantly sort of overshooting and bouncing. That's not ideal. I think you're getting away with it though, because again, if we go back and watch the video, it looks really smooth, doesn't it? I mean, it looks really good. So we're not seeing oscillations. Are we? I'm having a little trouble telling if I'm hearing them. Let's have a look at your motors and see if we're seeing oscillations in the motors. Are the motors noisy? Yeah, see, this isn't what I want to see when I'm looking at the motor traces. So do the filtering first and see if this cleans up. But then I think you could probably stand to knock at least your roll P down a notch. And if you knock your roll P down a notch and you find that you don't like the way that it flies, like I'm not sure what that might, it feels too soft to you. Some people like to have their copter constantly in a state of right on the edge of oscillations because it gives them this sort of ultra sharp, ultra snappy response. And if that's what you want, and from some of the way you're flying, it suggests that maybe you do, then stick with it. I mean, you're not getting jello on your camera, you're not getting vibrations. If your motors are coming down smooth, then yeah, I mean, fly it that way, right? Um, you redline a sport bike at 14,000 RPM and it sounds like it's going to explode, but that's just how it's meant to be run, right? So maybe that's the situation we're in here. But it's definitely the case that we're getting these oscillations, and I think these oscillations are probably not from lack of filtering entirely, but at least a little bit because your P term may be a little higher than than it. Well, if it were a little lower, I think some of this would go away. What do we got going on pitch? Let's just take a look, and let's zoom out a little. Zoom back in. And I'm going to look for one of your rolls again. Is this a roll? I think it is. A little half turn. Um, yeah, see, this is what concerns me the most is that when you're doing these moves, your P term is having a hard time sort of locking you into the target angular rate. And I think that's probably manifesting itself in maybe that relates to your bounce back. I don't know. It's hard to say that lowering P might help your bounce back, but because the P term is kind of hunting like this, it's causing other effects, and I wonder what the effect would be of lowering P a little bit. Um, if you have bounce, that's not a lot of bounce there. There was more bounce when you went back the other way. No, there's not a lot to see there. If there's bounce, it's just the tiniest bit. Usually, if you've got bounce, the next thing to do is to raise D, right? So possibly consider raising D. It's hard to judge whether your D term filtering is correct because you've got a relatively larger amount of noise getting into the P term, so it's a little hard to judge there. Um, but most people could probably stand to filter D a little bit more and get better results. So uh, those are my thoughts. Hope it was helpful and happy flying.